While many senators on the Judiciary Committee used today's hearings to ask Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson substantive questions about her jurisprudence on issues like reproductive rights and the use of the shadow docket, some Republicans chose instead to question her about their favorite boogeyman, critical race theory. Take Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, for example. He even brought props.
They include a book called Anti-Racist Baby by Ibram Kendi. And there are portions of this book that I find really quite remarkable. One portion of the book says babies are taught to be racist or anti-racist. There is no neutrality. Another portion of the book, they recommend to babies confess when being racist. Now, this is a book that is taught at Georgetown Day School to students in pre-K through second grade, so 4 through 7 years old. Do you agree with this book that is being taught with kids that babies are racist?
Senator, I do not believe that any child should be made to feel as though they are racist or though they are not valued or though they are less than, that they are victims, that they are oppressors. I don't believe in any of that. But what I will say is that when you asked me whether or not this was taught in schools, critical race theory, my understanding is that critical race theory as an academic theory is taught in law schools. And to the extent that you were asking the question, I understood you to be addressing public schools.
Elie Mystal is a justice correspondent for The Nation. His latest piece is titled Ketanji Brown Jackson's Historic Hearings Begins, along with the inevitable GOP freakout. And Melissa Murray is a professor at NYU New York University School of Law. She clerked for Justice Sonia Sotomayor back when she was a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. Also co-host of the Strict Scrutiny podcast with Leah Littman, and full disclosure, my wife, Kate Shaw. It's good to have you both there. There was a lot, I have to say, there was a lot of like stomach churning and enraging stuff. There was a lot of unintentional comedy today. I think the racist babies was one of them. I also think Lindsey Graham asking her to rate her faith on a scale of 1 to 10 was truly one of the most hilarious moments. But let me just throw it open to you. Your big takeaways. I'll start with you, Elie.
Yeah, the day starts with Lindsey Graham arguing that people in Guantanamo Bay should be left to rot and die without due process of law, like they've been thrown into the Bastille, and ended with Tom Cotton arguing that drug kingpins should be prosecuted and sentenced based on crimes other people have done. All right, so like those are just the bookends for where the GOP is right now. To say that they are kind of like sloughing into authoritarianism, jackbootism is like an understatement based on what they seem to think judges are supposed to do. And I wish more people understood that the Republican conception right now of what a judge should be is, again, it's like a gatekeeper at the Bastille, right? Like their only job is to like get people and throw them away and wait till like, Robespierre tells them what to do with their sentence, which is un-American, I believe.
Melissa, your thoughts?
I'm still over the Les Miserables French Revolution references, but I thought the most interesting thing was not necessarily what we saw from the GOP, because that was obviously to be expected, but I thought Judge Jackson really handled herself like every Black woman who has been in a workplace where she's had to listen to people mansplain to her essentially for hours and hours and hours. So she really held her composure. Again, the only time she sort of visibly flinched was with the unveiling of Anti-Racist Baby, where even she seemed to be over Senator Cruz. And she paused for quite a long time where it seemed like she was thinking, do I do it? Do I actually dismantle him and completely disembowel him or do I continue and become a justice of the Supreme Court? And she decided to go with Jesus and is likely to be a justice on the Supreme Court.
It's so funny. I don't know if we have it as B-roll, but to your point, when she says senator and then she takes the sigh and you can see the argument inside her with the devil and the angel on each shoulder arguing about whether I take this dude down or not. And then just like getting past that and moving on. By the way, I should just note, just in the annals of tendentiousness here, the book in question happens to be, I think, in the library of a private school that she's on the board of. Like, it was like the most, 6 degrees of separation to even get to the thing that had nothing to do. And to Ellie, your point, for this, fetishistic obsession that the right has with a kind of, I think, bad faith and disingenuous conception of judging about, balls and strikes, and we stay in our lane, so many of the questions had nothing to do with that, and we're so clearly outside of that lane.
Remember, the book, just to be clear, it's also in the library, as I understand it, of the private school that Ted Cruz's kids go to, too. So it's a book that's out there in the world. But I think people need to understand that according to Republican logic, all of this is okay. All of this stuff that has nothing to do with her judicial background, that has nothing to do with her decision-making process, all of this is in bounds, according to Republicans, because two confirmation hearings ago, a woman accused their guy of attempting to rape her while they were in high school. So the party of alleged, we are concerned about child sexual predators, didn't have any concern when one of their guys was accused of exactly that crime, and certainly doesn't have anything to say when they all support a president who was Donald Trump, who was accused by 25 women, I believe is the current number, of women of sexual misconduct. So it really goes one ways, but they think that they are morally justified in bringing in all of this claptrap against Jackson because of what happened to Kavanaugh, in the same way they think they were justified in bringing all of this also because of what happened to Robert Bork, who's a crank. So the internal moral justifications that Republicans go through, I find to be quite sickening.
Let me also just say, as the one white person here, it's just the whole thing is frankly racist. It's just obviously the case that the subtext here is you're a black woman, ergo you must prove that you are not soft on crime, and you also must disown and distance yourself from other black people who say other things because they're black. And if you're too associated with that, then your blackness is going to get in the way of your neutrality, which is fixed as this objective white feature. And it's just so on display. And again, if this had happened once, whatever. Sonia Sotomayor went through the exact same thing with this nonsense about Wise Latino, where it's just you are suspect in your neutrality as a judge because you are not white. It's just so on the face, Melissa.
Well, I think Justice Sotomayor is the most recent example, but she is obviously not the only example. We could go back to Thurgood Marshall's confirmation hearings, where we had the same kind of questions about whether or not he was soft on crime, his defense of criminals. All of this was sort of raised as evidence that he could not follow the rule of law, that he was soft on crime. And so we're seeing just a reprise of this. It's just a different African American. But I just want to underscore, the Republicans know that Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to sit on the Supreme Court, barring some cataclysmic event that is unlikely to happen. This isn't about her. This is about what happens in the midterm elections in 2022. It's what happens in 2024. It's about laying these dog whistle breadcrumbs for their base and for swing voters so that they can redeem them and collect them later in these political campaigns. This is political theater, pure and simple. Her confirmation, regrettably, is simply the forum for airing it.
It's very true. And the last thing I would just say is that, this is sort of a superficial point. There's lots of people who are brilliant and incredible and aren't particularly great on TV or talking in this setting. And there's people who are great at talking who I wouldn't want to put on the Supreme Court. But she is shockingly and remarkably good at that. As someone who puts people on TV for a living, I have just been struck. I knew about her. I knew about her incredible reputation, all these parts of her CV beforehand. But just seeing her there, wow, she's good at that. She really is a very, very formidable and impressive presence, and we'll get to see more of her later tonight and tomorrow. Elie Mystal and Melissa Murray, thank you both.